The Galactic High Council chamber was a masterpiece of alien engineering, a sweeping coliseum of light and shadow, suspended above a gas giant whose storms raged like living murals below. Thousands of delegates sat in tiered rings that spiraled upward like a massive hive, each row filled with beings of every imaginable form, feathered diplomats from Lyra Sigma, crystalline envoys from Jatel, sleek, scaled ministers from the Trosk Dominion. At the chamber's core stood a single figure, broad-shouldered, scarred, and silent. General Korvek gripped the speaking staff so tightly that the alloy creaked in his hand. The old warlord was a relic from a time when the galaxy still bled. His armor was not ceremonial but scarred from a dozen campaigns, every dent and burn mark left unpolished as if to remind the council what war really looked like. One of his tusks was broken. His left eye was a milky white scar earned during the siege of Krontor, where an enemy plasma blade had come within a breath of taking his life. He looked up. Thousands of eyes, lenses, and sensor nodes stared back at him in expectant silence. Kor's voice rumbled through the vast chamber like distant thunder. "You think you know war," he began. "You sit here, in this shining hall, passing decrees and sanctions, believing that the galaxy is civilized, tamed. You have forgotten what war smells like. What it tastes like." The translator nodes repeated his words in 1,000 tongues, each whispering slightly out of sync. "I have seen a fire growing in the void," Kor continued, his voice gaining weight with every word. "I have seen the species you dismiss as primitives. The ones you call humans. And I tell you this, if you keep treating them as you do now, if you keep testing them, they will bring that fire here. To us." Murmurs spread like a ripple through the council tiers. Some delegates clicked their mandibles in amusement. Others exchanged glances, as if silently agreeing that the general had finally lost his mind. From the 7th tier, Councillor Vethai of Trosk Prime rose, her silver carapace gleaming like a blade under the chamber lights. Her voice was high and cutting, like the scrape of metal on glass. "General Korvek," she said, "are we to believe that the great warrior of Krontor trembles at the thought of a backwater species barely capable of interstellar flight? Humanity is an infant. Their fleets number less than 50 ships. Their colonies barely cling to life outside their home star. And yet you would have us, what? Fear them?" Laughter broke out in several sections of the chamber, a sharp, echoing chitter of mockery. Kor's single good eye narrowed, and for a moment the warrior's rage was a living thing, coiled like a predator ready to strike. When he spoke again, it was not loud, but it was lethal. "I lost 4 legions fighting them." The laughter died instantly. The general stepped forward into the full light of the chamber. "For legions," he said again, his voice raw. 40,000 soldiers. On a dust-choked outpost they called Mars Forward Base. We came with overwhelming force. Our warships blotted out their sun. Our artillery burned their cities into glass. They should have surrendered. Any other species would have surrendered." He stopped, breathing hard, as the memory played across his face. For a moment, the chamber could almost see what he saw: the burning red sky of Mars, the thunder of boots in the dirt, the relentless crack of human rifles. "They did not break," Kor said at last, quieter now, almost to himself. "They fought harder. They fought longer. When we shattered their orbital shipyards, they launched fighters from the surface, scrap metal and jury-rigged engines, and rammed them into our cruisers. When we slaughtered their armored divisions, their civilians picked up weapons and charged us with nothing but knives. They are not prey. They are predators who have spent their entire history fighting extinction." A silence fell over the chamber so complete that the hum of the life support systems could be heard. Then Vethai hissed, her voice cutting through the stillness. "Enough of this madness. You paint them as monsters to justify your failures. The war you speak of was decades ago, fought over a single disputed colony. The Council has already ruled on this matter. Humanity is contained, their military power restricted by treaty. They are not a threat." "Not yet," Kor snapped. "But they learn faster than any species we have ever encountered. Do you even understand what you're facing? They evolve under pressure. They adapt when cornered. Every battle you fight against them makes them stronger. And one day, when you push them too far, they will come for you. The High Speaker rose from her seat at the very top of the chamber. Her crystalline body glowed with inner light, casting long, sharp shadows across the floor. "General Korvek," she said, her tone calm but final, "the Council has heard your testimony. Your service is honored. But we will not waste resources preparing for a threat that does not exist." Kor's grip tightened on the staff. For a heartbeat, it seemed he might say nothing. Then, with a sound like a gunshot, he slammed the staff against the floor. The crack echoed through the chamber, startling several delegates in the upper tiers. "You are making a mistake," he growled. "You think peace is permanent. You think war is a story told to frighten children. But the humans, they are war-given flesh. And when they come for you, I will not raise a single blade to stop them." With that, Kor turned on his heel and strode from the center of the chamber. His heavy cape dragged across the polished floor, leaving a faint streak of dust from distant battlefields. No one spoke as the massive doors slammed shut behind him. For several long moments, the council chamber remained utterly still. Then, slowly, the delegates began to murmur again, soft, dismissive, nervous. Some shook their heads. Others simply looked away, as though the old general's words were nothing more than the ranting of a relic long past his prime. But somewhere far away, beyond the glittering heart of the galaxy, beyond the reach of the council's censors, Kor's warning was already coming true. Night draped the Nevada desert in a velvet blackness, broken only by the scatter of stars overhead. The air was still, the sand cold beneath the boots of the soldiers gathered at the perimeter of the landing zone. Colonel Sarah Whitlock stood perfectly straight, her uniform pressed, her jaw set. Her green eyes scanned the dark sky, waiting. At 39, she was a veteran of 2 off-world conflicts and the kind of officer who radiated quiet control. "ETA?" she asked without turning her head. 2 minutes, replied Major James Holt, standing beside her. He was taller, broader, his presence almost intimidating, but the look in his gray eyes was one of anticipation rather than worry. Then the sky ripped open. A column of fire streaked through the heavens, splitting into dozens of flaming streaks that screamed toward the ground. The sonic booms rolled across the desert like thunder. The soldiers didn't flinch, they'd seen this before, but every council dignitary watching from the secured observation bunker did. The alien delegates tensed, mandibles clicking, frills flattening, wings fluttering nervously. One of them, a feathered envoy from Lyra Sigma, leaned toward another. "Are they under attack?" "No," came the quiet reply from the human liaison. "They're landing." The first capsule hit the ground with a bone-rattling whump, kicking up a cloud of dust. A moment later, the hatch hissed open, and a squad of soldiers emerged in full exosuit armor, matte black plating with faint blue tactical readouts glowing on their chests and visors. They moved like a single organism, rifles slung but ready. Major Holt allowed himself a small, satisfied grin. "Strike Team Aegis, reporting." Colonel Whitlock gave him a single nod. "Then let's give them the show they flew halfway across the system to see." Hours later, the alien dignitaries stood on the observation platform aboard the Celestial Accord, the Council's gleaming diplomatic frigate. From this high orbit, Earth was a blue and white marble below, serene and peaceful at least until the first human gunship screamed across the desert below at hypersonic speed. "Begin demonstration," Whitlock's voice came over the comms. The ground erupted in orchestrated chaos. Artillery drones rose from hidden silos and streaked toward designated targets, detonating with blinding flashes that lit up the desert like daylight. The targets, massive, armored mock installations designed to replicate enemy fortifications, were obliterated with surgical precision. Drop pods followed, slamming into the range with enough force to make the alien delegates flinch. Their hatches exploded open, and infantry poured out in perfect formation, advancing behind rolling walls of smoke and drone-projected cover fire. The council dignitaries watched in a mix of awe and growing unease. They had seen military drills before, but never like this. These weren't the distant, clean exercises they were used to. There was a brutality to it, a ferocity that felt almost personal. "Why are they simulating a planetary invasion?" hissed Counselor Vedhai, her mandibles twitching in irritation. "Not simulating," Colonel Whitlock's voice cut in cold and clear over the observation deck speakers. "Preparing." On the desert floor, Strike Team Aegis moved with terrifying efficiency. A hulking bipedal mech, callsign Titan 3, stomped into position, its Gauss cannon swiveling before spitting a tungsten slug that tore through a reinforced bunker. Another mech followed, shoulder-mounted missile pods unleashing a salvo that lit up the night in a cascade of fire. Overhead, gunships swooped low, their engines howling, while orbital platforms dropped kinetic rods that struck like meteors, turning entire swaths of desert into glass. Inside the observation deck, no one spoke. The dignitaries stood frozen, their reflections caught in the glass as explosions lit the horizon. It was not a parade, not a display meant to impress, it was a message. Major Holt's voice came over the calm, measured. Enemy command post eliminated. Resistance simulated at 86%. Pressing attack. The delegates exchanged glances. That number was not random, humans were simulating a war against a superior enemy force and still pressing forward as though victory were inevitable. And then the accident happened. It was subtle at first. A targeting drone flickered, its telemetry briefly spiking. The missile it controlled deviated by less than 3 degrees, just enough to miss its intended target. Instead, the warhead streaked skyward, climbing on a trajectory that no longer ended in the desert. Inside the observation deck, alarms began to chime. Trajectory breach, a council security officer barked. Before anyone could react, the missile slammed against the lower edge of the frigate's shield barrier. The explosion was small, a bright flash and a violent shockwave, but it rocked the observation deck and sent several delegates sprawling to the floor. Colonel Whitlock's face appeared on the comm screen a second later, jaw tight. Ceasefire. All units, ceasefire. The desert fell silent, smoke still curling skyward from burning wreckage. On the deck, Counselor Vethai rose slowly, her carapace shivering with fury. They fired on us, she hissed. It was a malfunction, Whitlock said sharply. No one was harmed. But her words did nothing to soothe the chamber. The alien dignitaries were already whispering to one another, voices rising, fear turning to anger. Vethai turned, her cold black eyes narrowing. Or perhaps it was a warning. Within hours, word spread across the interstellar networks. The Council frigate had been attacked during a human military demonstration. Every broadcast used the same footage, the fireball, the shield flare, the dignitaries thrown from their feet. By the next sunrise, the first Council fleets were mobilizing. The Sol system had never been this quiet. Colonel Sarah Whitlock stood on the command deck of the UTSS Vigilant Dawn, the pride of the Terran fleet. Around her, the bridge thrummed with controlled tension, status reports, weapons checks, the low hum of reactors running hot. Contact confirmed, the sensor officer called out. Multiple FTL signatures, inbound. 75 Council warships, destroyer class and above. Estimated time to engagement, 19 minutes. Major James Holt, standing at her shoulder, muttered under his breath. They didn't waste any time. No, Sarah said, her voice calm but carrying an edge that cut through the tension. They want to end this before it begins. She stepped forward, her boots striking the deck with deliberate precision, and placed her hands on the tactical holotable. Blue icons marked the Terran defense grid, orbital gun platforms hidden near Luna, swarms of automated drones lying dormant in the asteroid belt, and the Vigilant Dawn herself, flanked by a dozen cruisers. Sound battle stations, Sarah ordered. The klaxons blared. On the outer edge of the system, the Council fleet emerged from FTL like a storm front. Their sleek warships glowed under the distant light of Sol, their formation spreading into a wide attack pattern. To them, this was just another containment mission, a show of force to remind an upstart species of its place. They never expected what came next. From the shadowed side of the moon, the first Terran railguns opened fire. Tungsten slugs accelerated to a fraction of lightspeed tore across the void, smashing through shields and punching holes clean through the hulls of the lead destroyers. 2 confirmed kills, the weapons officer reported, voice clipped but electric with adrenaline. The Council fleet reeled in shock. For a heartbeat, their formation faltered, and that was when Earth unleashed its second strike. Drones swarmed from the asteroid belt like a living cloud, thousands of them, each no larger than a fighter jet but armed with enough firepower to cripple a capital ship. They darted through the Council formation, overwhelming point defenses, planting charges along cruiser hulls before peeling away. Explosions rippled through the fleet. On the Vigilant Dawn, the bridge erupted in a cheer, but Sarah's expression remained hard as steel. "Maintain pressure," she said. "Do not give them time to recover." The Council Admiral aboard the Veridats could hardly believe what he was seeing. His fleet was the largest ever deployed against a single world, and yet the humans fought like they had been planning this moment for decades. "They have concealed orbital defenses," his tactical officer stammered. "Multiple hidden platforms, autonomous drones, their fire patterns are adaptive." The Admiral's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Adaptive? They learn," the officer said grimly. "Every salvo we fire, they counter faster than the last." The Admiral stared at the tactical display. In all his centuries of service, he had never seen a species fight like this, not with such precision, such ferocity. "Withdraw the forward line," he said reluctantly. "Regroup before we—" A brilliant flare cut him off. The Veridat shuddered as a railgun slug smashed through its port shields, shearing off a third of its engine array. Inside the Vigilant Dawn, Sarah gripped the edge of the holotable as enemy icons began to blink out one by one. "They're falling back," Major Holt said, almost disbelieving. "Not yet, they're not," Sarah replied. Her voice was calm, but her heart pounded in her chest. "Fleet, advance. Press the attack until they are beyond Sol." The order went out, and the Terran ships surged forward. What followed was not a battle, it was a rout. By the time the Council fleet cleared the edge of the system, nearly half of its warships had been reduced to debris. The rest limped into FTL space, leaving behind shattered escorts and crippled cruisers. Silence fell on the bridge. For a moment, no one moved. Then Sarah straightened, her face unreadable. "Stand down from red alert," she said. "Prepare for diplomatic contact." 3 weeks later, the war was over. The Council sued for peace, their fleets too damaged and their morale too shaken to continue. The terms were simple: recognition of Earth as a sovereign power and a promise of non-interference in human expansion. Colonel Whitlock arrived at the Galactic Council chamber wearing her full-dress uniform, boots still scuffed from the deck of the Vigilant Dawn. The delegates who had once laughed at General Kor's warning now sat in tense silence. The treaty was placed on the central dais, its digital seal blowing faintly. Sarah stepped forward, signed it with a flourish, and turned to face the chamber. "You underestimated us," she said, her voice steady, carrying to every corner of the massive hall. "You thought we would kneel. We don't kneel, not to you, not to anyone. Remember that." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, a figure rose at the back of the chamber. General Korvac. His scarred face was unreadable, but he gave a single, solemn nod, the gesture of one warrior acknowledging another. And in that silent moment, the galaxy understood, this was not the end of humanity's rise. It was only the beginning.